Sometimes, the hardest goodbyes aren't the ones we say out loud, but the ones we never expected to happen in the first place. She thought she was about to start a family. Instead, she learned she was already on her own. The morning had been quiet, too quiet. The kind of quiet that feels like the breath before a storm. Claire Bennett stood in their kitchen, still in her hospital scrubs, clutching a tiny white stick with two pink lines. Positive. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was steady. She had imagined this moment so many times, how he'd smile, pull her into his arms, maybe even cry. Instead, Jordan Whittaker just stared. No words, no joy, just the sound of his breath, growing heavier by the second. "I thought we could celebrate together," Claire said, her voice gentle, unsure. "I came straight from my shift. I couldn't wait to tell you." Jordan loosened his tie, eyes fixed on the marble countertop. "We need to talk," he muttered, words that always carry weight. He didn't lift his gaze. "The company's relocating. Zurich, next month. The merger's going through." Claire blinked, confused. "Okay, then we'll go together?" She touched her stomach. "Jordan, this changes everything. We're going to have a baby." He finally looked at her, and in that one moment, she knew. Everything had already changed, just not the way she hoped. "I'm getting married," he said quietly, to Celeste Hahn. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it screamed. Claire gripped the edge of this counter. "Celeste? The daughter of the firm's biggest investor?" "How long?" she whispered. Jordan's voice was void of feeling. "It's a business arrangement." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Business? You're telling me you're walking away from me, your child, for a merger?" "I've made arrangements," he replied, reaching for his briefcase. "You'll have the apartment. You'll be taken care of. My lawyers will know." She stepped closer. "Look at me. Look me in the eye and say the last 3 years meant nothing." He met her gaze finally. But what she found in his eyes wasn't regret. It was absence, like the man she loved had already disappeared long ago. "I'm sorry," he said, but it sounded like a line rehearsed. He turned toward the door. "The accounts will be updated by morning. Don't try to contact me." Then he was gone. No slamming doors, no angry words, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after a dream ends. Claire stood in the kitchen, frozen, while the pregnancy test on the counter beeped again, a cruel little reminder of reality. Her phone buzzed, a message from her closest friend, Naomi. "How did it go? Is he excited?" Another buzz. News alert. Whittaker Enterprises merges with Hahn Global. CEO Jordan Whittaker to marry Celeste Hahn in Zurich. The walls tilted. The floor seemed far away. Claire barely made it to the bathroom before the nausea overtook her. But it wasn't morning sickness. It was heartbreak. Curled on the cold tile, she instinctively wrapped her arms around her belly. She wasn't alone. Her pager beeped. Emergency surgery. A child needed saving. She rose, washed the tears from her face, grabbed her keys, then paused. The test was still there. 2 lines. One, life about to begin. Another that had just ended. She slipped the test into her pocket, not as a memory, but as proof of what she'd carry forward. In the elevator, she typed a message to Naomi. "He's gone. We'll explain later," heading into OR. The doors opened. Claire stepped out. Back straight, eyes clear. She had 9 months to figure out how to raise a child alone. But right now she had a heartbeat to protect. Not her own. Not yet. Someone else's. Someone who still had a chance. The morning air was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the cold metal of the ATM as Claire leaned her forehead against it, trying her card for the 4th time. Access denied. Again. She had been on her feet all night in the operating room, saving someone else's child, while hers was still just a flutter inside her. Now her own life was unraveling, piece by piece. Behind her, a familiar voice cut through the fog. "You look like something the ER dragged in." Naomi Chen stood there, holding out a coffee, her eyeliner perfect, her expression fierce with concern. Claire took the cup without a word, hands trembling slightly. "He wiped it all," she whispered. "Joint savings, checking. Even my personal account." Somehow, Naomi's lips tightened as she clenched her cup. "That's illegal. He can't touch your personal account." "He did," Claire replied hollowly. "His name is on everything." He made sure of that. She showed Naomi the flood of notifications on her phone bank alerts, revoked access, and a final one. "Your penthouse entry code has been deactivated. I tried going home after my shift. The doors didn't open." Naomi didn't ask more. She gently tugged her away from the machine. "Where did you sleep?" "The on-call room," Claire muttered, sipping the coffee and grimacing. "This tastes like motor oil." Morning sickness hates caffeine. "Stay with me," Naomi said immediately. "I have a spare room." "Jenny moved out last month, remember?" Before Claire could answer, her phone buzzed again. Jordan's mother, calling. For the 6th time that week. "Still trying?" Naomi asked. "She probably wants to do damage control," Claire sighed. "Or maybe she doesn't even know," Naomi offered quietly. Claire shook her head. "She always knows." Naomi pulled out her phone. "Have you seen this?" She turned the screen toward Claire. A headline, a photo, a betrayal. "Whitaker Global finalizes Zurich merger. CEO Jordan Whitaker spotted with fiancée Celeste Hahn." The image showed Jordan in a designer suit, Celeste holding his arm like they'd always belonged together. He was smiling. The timestamp? 3 days ago. He hadn't just made his choice, he'd made it before Claire even told him she was pregnant. "Dr. Bennett!" A nurse ran toward them. "Your patient from last night, the appendectomy, she's crashing." Claire didn't flinch. She handed her coffee to Naomi and straightened her coat. "Page Dr. Morales for backup. I'll be there in 30 seconds, Naomi started. "Later," Claire said. "Already walking. Lives to save first. Life to rebuild second." For the next 4 hours, the emergency consumed her. By the time she stepped out of the operating room, drained but victorious, she had 7 missed calls from Jordan's mother and 1 text from an unknown number. "Legal documents will arrive this afternoon. Signature required." She hadn't even had time to breathe when Naomi appeared again. "I already had my brother drop off boxes at my place," she announced. "You're moving in tonight." Claire opened her mouth to protest. "I can't." "You can, and you will," Naomi said firmly. "I found 3 banks near the hospital. We'll open a new account at lunch. My cousin's a lawyer divorce. Custody, financial protection, all of it." Tears welled up in Claire's eyes. "I didn't—" "Don't you dare thank me," Naomi warned, pulling her into a hug. "Just promise me something. Anything. When you're back on your feet, and you will be, we make him regret ever hearing your name." Claire's pager buzzed again. Another emergency. She wiped her eyes, squared her shoulders, and managed a tired smile. "Deal," she said, already backing toward the OR. "Go save a life," Naomi called after her. "I'll handle the banks." As she scrubbed in for her second surgery of the day, Claire whispered a silent vow to the tiny life growing inside her. "He may have taken our past, but he doesn't get our future." She looked through the glass into the operating room. The nurse met her eyes. "Ready, Dr. Bennett?" Claire nodded. Hands steady, heart healing, mind clear, ready. Claire sat in silence, her hands resting on her growing belly as she stared at the glossy cover of a business magazine. There they were, Jordan and Celeste. Their wedding photo spread across 2 full pages, smiling beneath crystal chandeliers, framed by orchids and imported silk. A perfect fusion of East and West elegance, the headline read. It was the kind of event people flew across oceans to attend. The kind of event Claire was once supposed to have. Stop doing this to yourself, Naomi said softly, gently pulling the magazine from her grip. I have something better to show you. She slid a letter across the coffee table. The hospital's seal gleamed beneath the lamplight. Claire opened it cautiously, then froze. Full funding. Approval granted. Her proposal developing less invasive heart surgery techniques for pediatric patients was officially moving forward. You're leading your own research team now, Naomi grinned. While someone was off throwing a designer wedding in Singapore, someone else was rewriting the future of pediatric medicine. Claire didn't smile. Not quite. But her chest lifted with a different kind of pride. The kind you earn in silence, through pain, through purpose. Her phone buzzed. Again. Jordan's mother. Another message. Please let me help. This isn't what I wanted for you, or for the baby. Claire blocked the number. Kindness came too late when it's dressed in guilt. She called the hospital too, Naomi said gently. She's still asking you to move back to Boston. Not happening. Papers were piling up, weekly, now legal forms, non-disclosures, financial agreements. Naomi's cousin, Michael, a quiet but sharp lawyer, had been handling them all. He's trying to buy your silence, he'd explained the first time. Standard NDA with hush money hidden as a gesture of goodwill. He can't do that, Claire had said. No, Michael replied calmly. But if you accept the funds without signing, that's leverage. Now she opened a spreadsheet on her laptop. Michael had built it for her. Tiny investments. Legal, careful, quiet. Naomi leaned over. How close are you? 3 more years, Claire murmured. By then, I'll own enough shares to matter. She ran her hand along her belly as the baby kicked gently. He won't see it coming. Her pager buzzed. Pediatrics emergency. Duty calls, Claire said, rising carefully. Naomi called after her. By the way, the nurses are planning a baby shower next week. Just a small one. Only hospital staff. Claire paused at the door, her throat tightening. Thank you. Naomi smiled. We're your family now. All of us. As Claire drove to the hospital, she passed a massive billboard downtown. Whitaker Global. Building the future. Jordan's face smiled down on the city. She whispered to her unborn child, not the future he imagines. Her phone buzzed. Critically ill child incoming. Emergency surgery required. Claire shifted lanes, her mind already mapping the case. Let him build empires of glass and steel, she thought. She was building something stronger, a legacy of skill, compassion, and defiance. Another kick. Message received. She smiled. Let's go save someone's heart. The monitors beeped steadily in the OR. Your BP's rising, Dr. Martinez warned, eyeing the screen. Claire, you need to step out. I know what my body is doing, she said through gritted teeth. I'm not leaving until this child's heart is beating on its own. She was 39 weeks pregnant, technically on leave, but when the emergency case came, and a 6-year-old with a rare cardiac defect, she'd come in to consult, and never left the table. Claire's? Let me take over, Naomi said from across the surgical field. Almost there, Claire murmured, her hands unwavering despite the sharp contraction pulsing through her. Just a little. The child's heart monitor steadied. Normal sinus rhythm. Stable. Patient's good, the anesthesiologist confirmed. Claire exhaled and stepped back, pulling her gloved hands away from the tiny chest. Close for me, she told Naomi, voice slightly unsteady. I think I'm in labor. Close for me, Naomi, Claire said, her voice tight but calm. Then she added, almost as an afterthought, I think I'm in labor. What followed was chaos wrapped in urgency. Someone helped her onto a gurney, voices buzzing around her. Her scrubs were gone, replaced by a hospital gown. But even through the contractions and blinding pain, Claire's questions were the same. The child, my patient, are they okay? They're fine, Naomi assured her, holding her hand. Now please, for once, let someone else take care of you. 14 hours later, in a softly lit delivery room, a cry rang out strong, fierce, and full of life. Claire cradled her newborn son in trembling arms, dark hair, clear lungs. Perfect. He looks like him, she whispered, voice cracking. No, Naomi said gently. He looks like you, strong, stubborn, already rewriting the story by showing up in the middle of a surgery. A knock on the door made both women turn, hearts skipping. But it was just a nurse, arms full of flowers. These came for you, Dr. Bennett. The card was short. Congratulations. Margaret Whitaker. Claire blinked. How did she... Hospital gossip? Naomi replied. Want me to toss them? Claire looked from the bouquet to her son, then shook her head. No, leave them by the window. She may be a stranger to me, but she's still his grandmother. Dr. Martinez entered with a smile. Your patient from earlier? Full recovery. The parents want to thank you. Naomi beamed. Tell them Dr. Bennett is recovering from saving their child while giving birth to her own. Claire barely heard her. She was too busy memorizing her son's face, the curve of his cheek, the quiet strength in his grip. Hello, Leo, she whispered. We're going to be okay. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Whitaker Global opens Singapore headquarters. She glanced at the flowers, then back at her baby. Two paths stretched before her, one paved with anger, the other with quiet strength. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A young resident poked his head in. Sorry, Dr. Bennett, but could you consult on she literally just gave birth? Naomi snapped. Claire laughed. It surprised even her. It's okay. Tell me about the case. As she listened to the details, her newborn still resting against her chest, something inside her settled. A quiet knowing. This was who she was. A doctor, a mother, a survivor. Start the workup, she told the resident. I'll review the files. Tomorrow. Tomorrow? Naomi echoed, scandalized. Claire adjusted Leo in her arms. If we have to, I'll do rounds from a wheelchair. Right, little one? Leo yawned in agreement. And for the first time since Jordan walked away, Claire knew with absolute certainty they weren't just going to be okay. They were going to be remarkable. 2 years later. Leo, that's amazing. Claire called from her home office, where she sat surrounded by surgical journals and open case files. Her son stood proudly in the doorway, holding up a finished puzzle, 48 tiny dinosaur pieces snapped together in under 10 minutes. Try the 100-piece one next, she teased. Naomi, lounging on the couch nearby, raised an eyebrow. You know, most 2-year-olds are still figuring out how to put triangles in triangle-shaped holes, right? Leo. This is not most kids, Claire replied, highlighting a section in her notes. Her upcoming presentation on a new pediatric heart technique was already making waves. Then the TV, playing softly in the background, caught their attention. Whitaker Global stock plunges amid divorce rumors. Sources confirm CEO Jordan Whitaker and wife Celeste Hahn have separated. Naomi grabbed the remote and muted it quickly, but it was too late. Claire had already seen. She didn't flinch this time. It's fine, she said simply. I heard from Margaret last week. You're talking to her now? Naomi asked. Claire shrugged. She sends Leo books, educational ones. Naomi sat up straighter. What about the shares? 15%, Claire answered quietly. 1 more year, maybe 2. Then I'll have enough to matter. And this time, he wouldn't see it coming. Mommy, help me finish! Leo stood in the doorway, clutching a handful of puzzle pieces from the 100-piece dinosaur set. His hair was tousled from play, his face lit up with pure determination. "Take a break," Naomi urged from the sofa, raising an eyebrow at Claire. "The presentation can wait." Claire glanced at the clock. 3 hours until her next surgery. "All right, little genius," she said, pushing aside her laptop. "Show me what you've got." They knelt together on the floor, surrounded by puzzle pieces and coffee mugs. Then came the chime of her phone. A message from JNS Hopkins. They wanted her to present her breakthrough surgical method at their annual international conference. "Incoming!" Leo squealed, dropping a puzzle piece onto her head and giggling uncontrollably. Claire laughed, pulling him into a hug, breathing in the familiar scent of his baby shampoo. "What do you say, little man? Shall we take a trip to Baltimore? Mommy's got a big speech about fixing tiny hearts." Leo's eyes lit up. "Can we go to the aquarium after?" From the office doorway, Naomi smiled at the scene. "The conference is next month, isn't it?" she asked casually. "Same one where Jordan's getting his innovation award?" Claire's smile faded a little, but her tone stayed calm. "Yes, but Baltimore's a big city. Like the one in my book?" Leo asked suddenly. Both women froze. He was pointing at the muted TV. Jordan's photo was on the screen, his polished smile beside the logo of Whitaker Global. Claire's heart clenched. Leo had once tucked that very picture into his storybook. He had found it online himself. Curious. Quietly brilliant. "Yes, buddy," she said softly. "Like your picture," Leo nodded thoughtfully, then returned to his puzzle. "I need more blue pieces." Naomi walked over, remote in hand. "I'm sure she can handle this." The headline on the screen had changed. Dr. Claire Bennett to receive Medical Innovation Award at Henderson Gala. That evening, the ballroom shimmered with light, full of Seattle's best and brightest. Claire adjusted the deep green fabric of her gown, steadying herself as cameras flashed. In her left hand, she held Leo Ez. At 3 years old, dressed in a miniature tuxedo, he walked beside her like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Ready?" she whispered. "Ready, doctor." "Mommy," he replied with solemn pride, drawing a collective awe from nearby photographers. Naomi joined them, radiant in sapphire blue. "They're ready for you backstage." "I'll take Leo." "No," Claire said firmly. "He stays with me." There had been whispers, even objections, but Claire didn't care. Tonight, the medical world would see what success really looked like: a woman who rose from heartbreak, a child who came from love, a legacy built with bare hands and sleepless nights. She walked toward the stage, nodding at familiar faces, and then she saw him, Jordan, older now, thinner. His suit, still impeccable, but something in his eyes was tired. His presence shouldn't have surprised her. His company was a major donor, but seeing him still sent a ripple through her chest. Their eyes met for a single moment, then the event organizer appeared. "You're on in 5, Dr. Bennett." She broke the gaze and knelt before Leo. "Remember what we practiced?" He nodded seriously. "I give you the shiny doctor prize and say, 'Congratulations.'" "Perfect," she whispered, kissing his forehead as she felt Jordan's stare from across the room. The lights dimmed. Her name echoed from the stage, and she walked forward, her son at her side, her heels clicking with quiet certainty. The spotlight hit, the room hushed, and Claire began. "3 years ago," she said clearly, "I learned something extraordinary about tiny hearts. They're resilient. They mend. They grow stronger. But more than anything, they teach us courage in ways no textbook ever could." Her new technique had already saved countless lives. And yet, standing there, she felt the weight of one gaze more than all the applause. Jordan hadn't moved, hadn't approached. He just watched, as the son he'd never met. Handed her the award that would forever mark her place in medical history. And so, Claire said, her voice thickening, to every fragile heart I've helped heal, thank you. But my deepest gratitude belongs to my son, Leo, who reminded me that the strongest hearts are not always the ones we operate on. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Leo stepped forward, holding the crystal award high in his tiny hands. Congratulations, Dr. Mommy, he said into the microphone, beaming. And Claire, standing tall, hand in her son's, did not look at the bar. She didn't need to. She already knew the truth. Her greatest success was holding her hand. Right on cue, Leo stepped forward, tiny hands carefully clutching the crystal award. Congratulations, Dr. Mommy, he said, his voice proud and clear into the microphone. The crowd melted. Laughter rippled. Then applause loud, standing, heartfelt. Claire held her son close, cameras flashing all around them. She never once looked toward the bar. Later, back at their table, Naomi leaned over. He's gone. Left, right after your speech. Claire gave a quiet nod. Across the room, Leo was dazzling the hospital board with a surprisingly detailed explanation of heart chambers. He wasn't just bright, he was brilliant. Good, Claire murmured. Naomi studied her for a moment. He looked shaken. Because he finally saw what he gave up? Claire asked, her voice sharp and steady. Leo ran back, face flushed with joy. Mommy, Dr. Wilkins said, I can see the big machines tomorrow. Claire pulled him into her lap, burying her face in his soft curls. Did you thank him? I did. And I asked about the echocardiogram thingy, Leo said seriously, just like you showed me. As he launched into an almost shockingly accurate description of cardiac imaging, Claire's eyes drifted toward the exit. There, in a shimmering silver dress, stood Margaret Whitaker. Her expression was soft, her eyes full. Claire gave her a small nod. Margaret returned it, then quietly disappeared into the night. Mommy, Leo tugged her sleeve. Can we go see the fish tank again? Of course, baby. Claire stood and took his hand. Let Jordan run back to his broken marriage and failing empire. She had everything she needed right here. Just then, a nurse approached, breathless. Dr. Bennett, we've got an emergency coming in. Claire checked her watch. Naomi was already reaching for Leo's hand. Go, she said. We'll take care of the fish. Claire bent down and kissed her son's forehead. Be good for Aunt Naomi. Save the tiny heart, Mommy, Leo whispered, hugging her tight. And just like that, Claire's own heart surged with love so fierce it felt like it might break, but it didn't. It never would. This, she thought, as she rushed toward the emergency wing, this is what success truly looks like. The next morning, gossip buzzed through the hospital like static. Ceci, CEO of Whitaker Global, leaves Gala. Early. The headline flashed on someone's tablet. Claire didn't react. She was too busy reviewing her post-op notes. Another life saved, another tiny heart still beating. A nurse approached hesitantly. Dr. Bennett? There's a call from Singapore. It's not him, she added quickly. It's Celeste Whitaker. She says it's about your shares. Claire froze, her voice calm but clipped. Take a message. She also mentioned Margaret, her condition. Claire's head snapped up. What condition? Naomi appeared behind her, voice low. I just got the labs. It's pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Margaret's being admitted today. The pen in Claire's hand snapped clean in half. Blue ink spilled across her fingers. How long does she have? Months? Maybe. Naomi handed her a tissue. She's asking for you. Claire let out a shaky, bitter laugh. I'm a pediatric surgeon. She knows, Naomi said softly, but you also know why. The FaceTimes, the books, the toys, the investment advice. Margaret's been building a bridge. while her son was burning them. Claire's phone buzzed again. Another alert. Whitaker Global stocks plummet amid leadership turmoil. The nurse was still waiting. About Mrs. Whitaker's call. Claire stood slowly, tucking the ink-stained tissue into her coat pocket. Tell her I'll call back. She straightened her white coat. Voice steady, face unreadable. After I see Margaret. Margaret's room was on the oncology floor. She looked smaller than Claire remembered, less regal, more human. The hospital gown dulled her usual elegance. I wondered who would tell you first, Margaret said, her voice frail but clear. Surprised it was my daughter-in-law. Claire didn't speak. She checked the IV line, her doctor instincts taking over before her emotions did. I assume she mentioned your shares? She did. Margaret's smile was tired. Celeste is preparing to leave him. She wants allies. She thinks you, could tip the board. Claire didn't answer. Not yet. Margaret reached for her hand. But that's not why I asked you here. Her voice shook slightly. I'd like to see my grandson, while I still can. And Claire, who had once stood in a silent kitchen, holding a pregnancy test in trembling hands, now nodded softly. After my next surgery, she whispered. Thank you, Margaret said. Whatever happens next. He has Jordan's mind, but your heart. Thank God for that. I thought it might be your daughter-in-law, who told you first, Margaret said softly, a tired smile curling at the corners of her lips. Claire barely looked up as she checked the monitors, letting the routine ground her. But inside, her thoughts were already racing. I doubt that call was really about the shares, she murmured. Margaret gave a weak chuckle. She's smart. Celeste is preparing to leave him. She wants allies, and she thinks you... Claire stopped moving. The realization hit like a wave. She's trying to force him out. Margaret nodded. The board is divided. Your shares, and now, Lucas's, could tip the balance. She reached for Claire's hand. But that's not why I asked to see you. Claire's grip softened as she squeezed Margaret's fingers gently. Leo will want to see you. He doesn't know anything, does he? Margaret asked, her voice suddenly fragile. The cancer, the divorce, the gifts, everything. No. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. What I want, she said slowly, is to see my grandson while I still can. She waved a trembling hand. The rest? It's just business. Claire's pager buzzed again. Another emergency. Go, Margaret said, already fading with exhaustion. But Claire... When Celeste calls, again listen. Sometimes revenge and justice wear the same face. Claire paused at the door. I'll bring Leo after the operation. Thank you, Margaret whispered. Then almost with a smile. He has Jordan's mind, but your heart. Thank God for that. As Claire hurried to the OR, her thoughts raced. Margaret was dying. Celeste wanted to overthrow Jordan. And somewhere in Singapore, the man who left them was about to learn just how much he had truly lost. Her phone buzzed one last time before she scrubbed in. Celeste Whitaker. Files for divorce. Claims controlling interest in Whitaker Global. Claire smiled faintly behind her surgical mask. For the first time in years, she held all the cards. The hospital lounge TV droned with financial headlines. Whitaker Global, rocked by allegations of fraud and internal power struggle. Claire glanced at the screen. Jordan's face flashed drawn, exhausted, far from the confident CEO he once was. Mommy, how's this? Leo's voice broke the silence. He held up his notebook proudly, revealing equations far beyond his years, calculus problems most adults would stumble over. Can we visit Grandma now? Before she could answer, Naomi burst into the room, holding up her tablet. You need to see this. It was an email from Celeste's legal team, requesting urgent discussion regarding your 18% holding in Whitaker Global. Claire's eyebrows lifted. I only owned 15. Naomi lowered her voice. Margaret transferred her shares to Leo yesterday. It's all legal. She did it before her new treatment started. Claire's phone rang again. Celeste. She'd been calling every day. Take it, Naomi said gently. It's time. Claire looked at Leo, now humming softly as he flipped through his workbook. He looked so peaceful, so brilliantly unaware of the storms around him. Stay with him, she told Naomi, and stepped outside. Dr. Bennett speaking. You've been avoiding me, Doctor. Celeste's voice was crisp and direct. We have things to discuss. Your son's shares, combined with your own, now make you the single largest stakeholder in Whitaker Global. Claire's eyes remained on the lounge window, watching her child's silhouette. I'm aware. Jordan doesn't know about the boy, does he? Careful, Claire said calmly. Threats won't get you anywhere. Not a threat, Celeste replied. An opportunity. Help me take control of the board, and Jordan loses everything. Isn't that what you want? Claire took a breath. What I want is to make sure my son's future is protected. Then we understand each other. The board meets in Singapore next week. Your presence would speak volumes. Before Claire could reply, her pager buzzed again. It was Margaret. Complications. I'll consider it, she said quickly, then hung up and rushed to oncology. Inside the room, Margaret lay pale and still, her vitals fluctuating, beside her bed Leo, holding her hand. She wanted to see him, Naomi said quietly. She didn't want to go without that. Claire swallowed the lump rising in her throat. She walked to the bedside, placing her hand over Leo's. Margaret's numbers dropped, but her smile, however faint, remained. And in that moment, Claire understood. Some legacies aren't built by fortune or name. They're built by choosing love, even when no one else does. But the monitors steadied. Margaret had stabilized for now. Claire scanned the charts, her medical instincts clashing with emotions she hadn't had time to process. They want me in Singapore, she said finally, her voice quiet but resolute. Celeste's making her move. Go, Naomi nodded. I'll stay with them both. Margaret stirred, eyes fluttering open as Claire approached. Singapore? She asked weakly. Yes, Claire replied. Celeste called. Margaret gave a faint smile. It's time he learned. Learned what, Grandma? Leo asked, holding her hand gently. Margaret looked into his curious eyes and said that the biggest mistakes in life often come with the highest cost. Claire's phone buzzed. Her travel agent had confirmed it. First-class tickets to Singapore. She watched as Leo sat beside his grandmother, explaining advanced calculations with a confidence far beyond his years. And in that moment, a quiet certainty took root in Claire's chest. Jordan Whitaker hadn't just walked away from his son 3 years ago. He had abandoned his entire future. The boardroom at Whitaker Global was silent. All eyes were on her as Claire stood, calm and composed, representing the controlling 18% stake in the company. Jordan sat at the far end, pale as stone. Celeste was poised between them, collected and elegant. Before we begin, Claire said, connecting her laptop to the screen, I have something to share. A video began to play. Leo, seated at his study desk, solving engineering problems while chatting with Margaret, his laughter filling the room. This is Leo Bennett, Claire said, her voice clear, age 3, IQ tested at 164. My son. She paused, then added, our son, Jordan's and mine. The room erupted. Jordan gripped the table, his knuckles white with shock. Claire's phone buzzed. A message from Naomi. Margaret's crashing. Get back now. She took one last breath and turned to the board. I'll be brief. I'm casting my shares and my son's in favor of Celeste Whitaker's restructuring proposal. Effective immediately, Jordan Whitaker is removed as CEO. Gasps. Protests. But Claire didn't flinch. She closed her laptop, turned. Dr. Bennett, Celeste called as she stepped away. We should discuss. My lawyer will handle it, Claire said without looking back. I have a patient waiting. She caught the first flight home, but it wasn't fast enough. Margaret passed an hour before she landed. Naomi met her at the door of the hospital's suite, eyes heavy with grief. She asked me to give you this. She handed over an envelope. Inside, a handwritten letter and a USB drive. While Leo slept, Claire read. Her hands trembled. Dearest Claire, by now I imagine the board meeting is over. I hope they saw what I've always seen, the brilliance in your son and in you. This is my final gift. Proof that Jordan didn't just abandon love. He abandoned legacy. On the drive, you'll find everything. The forged merger documents, the backdated marriage license, the irregular transfers. I kept them all, not for revenge, but for Leo, because he will need protection from the storm ahead. Love him enough for all of us. Margaret Claire plugged in the drive. As she read through the documents, understanding dawned like cold light. Jordan's betrayal hadn't been just personal. It had been calculated, strategic, fraudulent. The merger, the wedding, the lies, all orchestrated before he even knew about Leo. Her phone rang. Don't, Naomi warned. Claire answered anyway. Silence. Then why? Jordan's voice was barely audible. You lost the right to that question 3 years ago, Claire said softly. She turned to look at Leo, still curled up, safe, whole. The company is hers now, she added. And the truth? That's yours to live with. Claire, please. Goodbye, Jordan. She hung up, blocked his number, for the last time. Naomi sat beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. What now? Claire looked at the latest issue of a medical journal. Her name was on the cover, a new technique that had already saved dozens of lives. She looked at Leo, brilliant, beautiful, and entirely untouched by the weight of his father's name, and she smiled. Now, she said, we build something better. For him. Claire stood alone in her office, the late afternoon light casting soft shadows across the room. She looked down at her pager, another emergency surgery. The world hadn't stopped. Tiny hearts still needed mending. And somewhere across the globe, Jordan Whitaker was finally coming to terms with everything he'd lost. Her eyes drifted to the unopened envelope on her desk. Leo's 4th birthday invitation. Beside it lay court documents, still warm from the printer. Request for visitation. Denied. It had been 3 weeks since Margaret's funeral. Jordan had flown in, stood quietly at the back of the church, and left before Claire and Leo arrived. Her assistant peeked into the office. Dr. Bennett, Mr. Whitaker is in the lobby. He's refusing to leave. Claire closed her eyes, just for a second. Call security. He has papers, the assistant added. He says they're from Margaret. That made her pause. Give me 5 minutes. She found him by the hospital's fish tank, Leo's favorite place. Jordan looked nothing like the man she once knew. His designer suit hung loose, wrinkled, his face hollowed by regret. Security is on their way, Claire said, her voice flat. I won't stay long. He held out a thick envelope. It's from my mother, for Leo. Her lawyers just released it. She took it, careful not to get too close. That's all? Helen won, he said hollowly. The company's gone. I'm finished. He let out a bitter laugh. Seems fair, I guess. Nothing about this is fair, Claire replied, steel in her voice. You made sure of that 3 years ago. I want to meet him, Jordan said quietly. No, he's not a company you can reacquire, Jordan. He's our son. Claire laughed bitterly. You lost the right to that word the day you chose a merger over your family. The merger was a mistake. Everything was. He stepped closer. Let me try. Security approached. Goodbye, Jordan. He pulled out one last envelope. A letter, for when he's older. Please, Claire took it, if only to end it all faster. You should know, she said as the guards led him away. He's already surpassed your best engineers. And he's 4. A flicker of pain flashed in Jordan's eyes. Like father, he began. No, Claire said, eyes blazing. Like mother, like son, I stayed. She turned. The envelopes weighed heavy in her coat pocket, but not heavier than the future she was building. That night, when Leo had fallen asleep, his breathing soft, a book about heart valves slipping from his hands, Claire finally opened the letters. Margaret's was filled with love, wisdom, and the gift of security, a trust fund that would see Leo through every dream he dared to have. Jordan's was full of apologies. Too late, too empty. Claire tucked them both into a new envelope, sealing it. She wrote on it in her familiar, careful hand, for Leo on his 18th birthday. Then she sat at her desk and pulled out a blank sheet. Her own words came quickly. My dearest son, your father chose an empire of glass and greed. I chose you. And it was the easiest choice I ever made. Love, Mom, her phone buzzed. Whitaker, Global Assets seized. Former CEO under investigation. She turned the screen off, walked into Leo's room. He slept surrounded by Margaret's final gifts books. On pediatric surgery, physics, and dreams far bigger than his age. Some choices, Claire thought, watching him breathe, echo forever. But sometimes, they echo in ways no one expects. She closed the door gently behind her, leaving the past folded into letters for another day. A month later, and the Pioneer in Pediatric Surgery Award goes to Dr. Claire Bennett. The conference hall rose in applause. Leo, now 6, sat in the front row beaming, hands folded in his lap, between Naomi and his favorite nurse. Claire stepped onto the stage, heart steady. 3 years ago, she had stood on a very different podium. Today, her voice was stronger, calmer. I used to think the most fragile things in this world were hearts, especially the tiny ones I operate on. But I've learned something. They're not fragile at all. They bend, they break, and they heal stronger than ever. She looked down at her son, his eyes shining with pride. And in that moment, she knew. The hardest path she ever walked had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Today, Claire said from the stage, her voice steady and warm, I don't just want to talk about tiny hearts. I want to talk about the bigger ones, the ones that keep beating, even when life throws everything at them. Her surgical technique had become the gold standard worldwide, saving thousands of children. But as she spoke, her eyes kept drifting toward Leo, nearly bouncing in his seat with excitement. He had news of his own to share. In the back of the auditorium, a man slipped in quietly. No one noticed him. He was no longer the Jordan Whitaker people remembered. No sleek suit, no polished charm, just a tired frame and the weathered face of a man who had lost everything. Claire continued, to every parent who's trusted me with their child's heart, thank you. You've reminded me that the strongest muscle isn't always the one we can see. Right on cue, Leo ran to the stage, eyes sparkling, holding her award with both hands. My mommy fixes hearts, he declared proudly into the microphone. And I'm going to help. I got accepted into the gifted medical program. A collective gasp swept the room. It was a program for high school prodigies. Leo was 6. Claire bent down, pulling him close, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. That's right, sweetheart, she whispered. We'll fix them together. Later, at the reception, Naomi nudged her gently. He's gone, slipped out right after your speech. Claire nodded. Across the room, Leo was explaining cardiac anatomy to a group of wide-eyed medical students. Good, she said simply. Naomi handed her a folded newspaper clipping. Former tech CEO volunteers at children's hospitals in Southeast Asia. Claire said nothing. She tucked it into her purse without even glancing at it. Let Jordan find redemption wherever he could. She and Leo had work to do. "Mommy!" Leo called across the room. "The dean wants to know if I can start the program next month." Claire smiled, walking toward her son, leaving the clipping and everything it represented behind. They had hearts to heal, and that was all that mattered. As they stepped outside the conference hall, Leo chattered excitedly about heart valves and circulation rhythms. For a brief moment, Claire caught their reflection in a window. Two white coats, side by side, mother and son both ready to change the world. Some empires, she thought, are built from steel and glass, but the strongest ones are built on love, one beating heart at a time, 9 years old. That's how old Leo was when the children's cardiac wing was renamed, the Margaret Whitaker Center for Pediatric Innovation. He stood proudly beside Claire, adjusting his tiny lab coat as they unveiled the plaque. "Dr. Leo Bennett," Claire read aloud, her voice thick with emotion. Below his name, youngest certified medical researcher in U.S. history. Leo grinned, his father's dimples flickering, but it was Claire's fire in his eyes. "Can we start the trials today?" he asked, eyes shining. His heart valve design sketched at 7, refined at 8, now approved for initial testing, had drawn international attention. The ceremony was quiet, just hospital staff and a few journalists. If anyone noticed the man standing at the back of the room, no one said a word. Jordan looked older than his years, the weight of his redemption tour written in the tired lines of his face. Now it was Claire's turn to speak. "My colleague, Dr. Leo Bennett," she said with a smile, "will explain his breakthrough himself." Leo stepped up to the podium with the confidence of someone twice his age. He launched into a complex explanation that left even the most seasoned surgeons blinking in amazement. Claire stood to the side, watching him with a full heart. Her phone buzzed again. Another award nomination, another keynote invitation. She didn't even check. Those weren't her greatest accomplishments. Not anymore. Her greatest achievement was standing right there, changing the world before he'd even turned 10. He carried Margaret's quiet compassion and Claire's unshakable drive in every word he spoke. As the event ended and the crowd began to disperse, Claire caught sight of Jordan, still standing by the plaque. Their eyes met, just for a second. No words were spoken. None were needed. He placed his hand gently on Margaret's name, then turned and walked away. The halls of Henderson Hospital were quiet in the early morning light. Sunlight spilled across polished floors, warming the walls that had witnessed both sorrow and triumph. In the pediatric cardiac wing, soft laughter drifted from behind a glass door. Inside, Leo stood beside his mother, watching a monitor as a tiny heart beat strong and steady. Another life saved, another whisper of hope. "Perfect rhythm," he said, scribbling something into his notes. Claire smiled, her hand resting gently on his shoulder. At just 9 years old, he already spoke with the certainty of someone who had seen more than most, not just inside operating rooms, but inside life itself. There were no more boardrooms, no more courtrooms, no more names to fight or reclaim. The past was folded neatly into letters and photographs, tucked away in drawers they rarely opened. And the future? It wasn't something they chased anymore. It was something they built, each day, one heartbeat at a time. Later that afternoon, Claire sat under a tree just outside the hospital garden, her coat folded beside her. Leo lay with his head in her lap, a book on advanced bioengineering resting on his chest. "Mom," he said quietly, "do you think I'll ever be as good as you?" Claire looked down at him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "No," she whispered with a smile. "I think you'll be even better." In the distance, wind chimes danced softly in the breeze. A new generation of doctors walked the hospital halls, inspired by a little boy with big ideas and the mother who had believed in him when the world didn't. Somewhere, in another part of the world, a man read about the boy he once turned away from. He did not reach out again. He didn't need to. Some wounds aren't meant to be reopened, but they can teach us how to hold tenderness in our hands for others and for ourselves. And so the story continued, not with revenge, not with regret, but with purpose and peace. Because sometimes the heart that's been broken the most learns how to heal others best. And sometimes the greatest legacies aren't carved in stone or sealed in contracts, but written gently, in kindness, in resilience, and in love, passed from one beating heart to another. Thank you for walking with us through this story, for feeling each heartbreak, every moment of hope, and all the quiet victories along the way. Stories like this aren't just about the characters we follow. They're about all of us, our strength, our choices, our ability to rebuild after loss, and most of all, our capacity to love. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, then it has already done what it was meant to do. From our hearts to yours, thank you for listening, for feeling, and for believing that healing is always possible. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, and keep your heart open. With love, the Shining Stories team.